When Gunfire Games' Remnant from the Ashes launched in 2019, it didn't have much buzz. However, many discovered it to be a well-tuned, mechanically solid shooter with fun co-op. It would sell over 3 million copies by December 2021, and years later, we're finally getting a sequel. Remnant 2 launches on July 25th for Xbox Series X and S, PS5, and PC. Let's look at things that you should know before jumping in. Worlds. While players will see familiar worlds in the sequel, there have been some sweeping changes. Yesha, home to the Pan, has become overrun by the Root and warped almost beyond recognition. The Fae and Dran worlds of the first game have combined into one, Loathsome. While many of the Dran are now part of a hive mind and frenzy-prone, the Fae occupies the directionless nobility and consumes the former's life force. Ne'erud, a massive spaceship which emerges from a black hole, is now a necropolis for the once proud Drizzer. Each world has unique circumstances and all look fairly stunning. Random generation. Remnant from the Ashes was notable for random elements in its world layouts, with certain NPCs, items, and so on appearing in subsequent playthroughs. However, Remnant 2 is going much further, this time randomizing entire biomes to present different enemies, bosses, and stories with each playthrough. For example, in Yaisha, you can battle flying monsters across floating islands on the first visit, and then enter a forest with killer lizards on the second. One run, you could see a musician asking for help, while another could have you undertake a mission for a Pan Empress. As Gunfire Games CEO David Abrams said, if you go in and you fight a mini-boss, and another player goes in and fights a mini-boss in an area, they might have a completely different boss. You might even have different events. Different random events occur in the game, and even the layouts of the dungeons change. The Labyrinth. Of course, the various worlds aren't the only things that have changed. The Labyrinth, the main gateway for accessing other worlds, is crumbling. According to the developers, its degradation is causing abnormal aberrations. Is this why players arrive at different biomes and experience different events? It's unknown, but something is going on. Enemies. The Root is a major threat, and you'll encounter all kinds of creatures, from small ones to giant beasts with multiple arms and axe-wielding warriors. However, there are other enemies, like a hulking stone machine with numerous swords, flying enemies with spears, and ordinary grunts with torches that can swarm you. There are even mounted warriors, sentient machines, and autonomous robots with surprising agility. It's a big step up from the original in terms of variety. Combat. If you've played Remnant from the Ashes, Remnant 2's combat will look very familiar. It's a third-person shooter but with melee combat and a stamina bar. Every time you sprint and dodge roll, which has iframes, stamina is consumed. You can equip 2 guns and a melee weapon and use different armor sets, with higher weight classes leading to encumbrance depending on the archetype, rings, and weapon mods. If mods work the same as the first game, they can shoot alternative fire attacks like shocking projectiles and recharge by damaging enemies. Archetypes. Instead of classes like the first game, Remnant 2 uses a new archetype system. There are 4 archetypes, each with unique skills. The Challenger is a tanky mid-ranged fighter who can equip heavier armor without getting encumbered and get back into the fight after taking fatal damage. The Handler gets a dog companion who can attack enemies, draw aggro, and even automatically revive you. The Gunslinger is the prime damage dealer, who can reload all weapons using a skill and auto-target enemies to fire 6 shots. Finally, there's the Medic, who could create a well to heal allies and even create shields around them that grant healing over time. Unlike mods, skills have cooldown timers. Each archetype has a prime perk, and by leveling it up, you can unlock other new perks that can buff your team, increase damage, and so on. Traits are associated with each archetype and leveled up alongside them, but you can only equip one. You get trait points to upgrade other traits, but they're limited, so you need to choose carefully. Dual archetypes. The biggest game changer is dual archetypes, which allow using the traits and skills from a different archetype. For instance, if you're a gunslinger, you can take a trait and skill from the Challenger for added toughness. You can only use one skill and one trait from the secondary archetype, which starts at level 1, regardless of your primary archetype. You can't equip prime perks from the secondary archetype, but overall, the system grants much more freedom when creating a character. You can also swap between unlocked skills or change to a completely different archetype out of combat. No more starting a new character to try every new class. Bosses. Remnant from the Ashes had some memorable boss fights, but the sequel ups the ante in scale and mechanics. The Mother Mind is one such example, attacking with its massive limbs and eventually destroying the platform that players stand on. After moving to a safer position, they must deal with acid projectiles, smaller enemies, and newer attacks. Other potential bosses have been teased, though we've yet to see them in action. Weapons. Lever-action rifles, pistols, machine guns, shotguns, and more are present, but it wouldn't be a sequel without some new weapons. And there are plenty of enticing options. In the recent trailer, an assault rifle with an aesthetic akin to the Labyrinth, a throwing axe, a flail, and a bow have been spotted. New weapon mods are also seemingly teased, including a stasis field that slows enemies and a harpoon that can pull foes in. Co-op. Remnant from the Ashes presented a good experience solo, and Remnant 2 looks no different. However, co-op is one of the highlights, as up to 3 players can venture into the various worlds together, presumably after finishing the tutorial. The first game had a trait called Teamwork, which increased damage resistance if you were close to a teammate, but it's unknown if that will return. Based on the gameplay showcase thus far, co-op looks to scale the difficulty up like its predecessor. PC requirements. Remnant 2's PC requirements are a little hefty on the minimum end. You'll need an Intel Core i5-7600 or AMD Ryzen 5 2600, 16GB of RAM, and an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1650 or AMD Radeon RX 590. On the recommended side, a Core i5-10600K or AMD R5 3600, 16GB of RAM, and an RTX 2060 or Radeon RX 5700 is required. Regardless of your configuration, you need 80GB of installation space and Windows 10 at the very least. Early Access. Continuing a popular trend in today's games, purchasing the Ultimate Edition for $69.99 grants early access. You could play on July 22nd, 3 days before the worldwide release. Is this going to be another case of early access users beta testing the game for everyone else? Time will tell, but if you want to play early, it is an option. Post-launch DLC. Also included with the Ultimate Edition is the DLC bundle, which has 3 post-launch DLC packs. They add new creatures and environments, and will release within 1 year of the base game. Hey, did you know that we at Gaming Bolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.